everyone. Thank you so much. And thank you to Kate for that very warm welcome. I'm so interested and excited to get to know these panelists better. So let's get to it right now. And I'm going to ask this first question to you ladies. And because this is Zoom, I'm going to ask you to do this in a certain order. Okay. So let's go Tracy, then Sherry, then Taylor, then Amy. Let's go this way. Let's find out a little bit about your careers. And the way that I want to do this is let's start, because we have a lot of students in the audience, right? Tell us, what was your first job that you had in media? And then what was your turning point job? The one that really made you realize you were going to be doing this as a career, hopefully for a long time. So Tracy, I'll start with you.
Sure. Well, thank you, Maggie, and thanks everyone for having me. My first job was actually as a researcher for CBS Sports. Always wanted to be in front of the camera since I was about 8 years old, but had no idea how to get there and had no experience in college. So I was able to get a job as a researcher with some background and production assistant experience. And so I started at CBS Sports as a researcher, and then a long road, I finally got that first on-air job, thanks to a fake tape, by the way, that I made. None of it ever aired, sent it all across the country, got one opportunity in Trenton, New Jersey at a mom and pop shop. I was hired as the only sports reporter there, and that was my first opportunity. And the time I realized, like, oh my God, I made it, I'm here. And that was the launch point to my career with CBS.
I also want to thank everyone for having me. Excited to talk to everybody today. My first, I guess, foot in the door was an internship when I was in college in Madison, Wisconsin. As a production assistant, just helping the producer write. But I knew I wanted to be on air. So like Tracy, I made a fake resume tape the summer after I graduated college and just blasted that out to, I can't tell you how many different stations. I sent twice when it's been like 3 months to send another email just to get a reel out, and was able to get my first TV job in Columbia, Missouri. And I actually started in news, which I wanted sports, but they had no sports job. So I told the news director I loved news and took the job anyways. But once I finally got that sports job, I, just kind of realized you can do it, and took a lot of determination, but thankful to be now with CBS Sports.
Hi, Maggie, and thank you again for the Center of Communications for having me tonight. So my first job was right out of NYU, and it was at a label and a publisher called Razor and Tie, if anyone knows of it. They have the Pretty Reckless and a whole bunch of other bands there. And so I didn't really know that I wanted to go into music licensing. I really didn't understand what the job entailed until I did a lot of research and interned at places like Vice and production libraries and other labels, and knew that I wanted to combine my passion for music and film. So I had the right connection with CBS Sports, and I started in 2018 there.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining tonight. I was lucky enough that I actually had a TV program in my high school where I grew up that I kind of ended up in by accident. And that's sort of where I discovered that I wanted to do this, I thought, for my career. So when I went to college at the University of Miami, that's what I studied. And while I was there, I worked as a runner on different productions. And when I graduated, it was kind of a difficult time to find a job. I wanted to come back up here. And I got an interview with CBS College Sports at that time. Really wanted to be in news, got offered the job at CBS Sports, of course, took it. And then it couldn't have been more than a couple of months in when I realized this was kind of it for me and the career I wanted to follow. So kind of opposite of what Cherie said, I wanted to be in news and ended up in sports, and it's worked out pretty well.
I would definitely say so. Amy, I'm going to go back to you on this one because I want to talk about the qualities that you look for in people that are on your team. And then for the rest of the panel, not just what qualities you look for in people on your team, but the qualities you have that you think have really helped you get to where you are. And so Amy, I'll start with you and just go right back to you. And then let's go Taylor, Sherry, and Tracy.
Yeah, so when I'm looking to either add someone to a show or put together a team to work on something, I'm always looking for people who are the hardest workers in the room. People who are willing to do anything, whether it's technically their job title or not. People that are easy to work with. Everybody wants to be around people who are good to be around. So those are two super important ones to me. And then people who are knowledgeable on whatever you're doing. So whether it's going in for an interview or going to asked to work on a show or a game that maybe you weren't assigned to within your own company, knowing about that show, knowing about that game, coming to the table with ideas and being able to really just be a team player, I think are all really important qualities.
Yeah, and in my career path, I've noticed that the people who ask the most questions in the room usually get farther ahead. They're knowledgeable, like Amy said, and that's really important to have in any field that you go into. And so I'm definitely looking for someone that is not afraid to ask questions and who definitely is willing to expand the department that they're in and make the right connections with producers, with directors, and just not be afraid to step out of the box. Especially when it comes to corporate America, it can be very rigid sometimes, but it's really important to just, express your thoughts and look for new and innovative ways of going about things.
And to piggyback off of both Amy and Taylor here, asking a lot of questions, particularly for on air and sports. There's a lot of different sports that are very nitpicky, like baseball, their lingo is so particular versus how you say things for hockey. So asking questions if you don't know, being a student of the game, being a nice person first and foremost, because it's a people business, and getting to connect with people is, I think, really the main part of what we do. So being someone that people want to be around and working with is a really strong point. Being flexible, being willing and able. In this business, you give up a lot of things like holidays, weddings, weekends, weird hours. So knowing that there is going to be a sacrifice. I did ask another reporter when I was first coming up, like, is it worth it? Because she was where I wanted to be. And she told me she thought it was. So, I kind of put my nose to the grindstone. And if you can find the right thing and find the right path, I do think it is worth it.
Well, I think, Sherry, you kind of hit on it. Specifically with the balance, I think that's really important. I'm a mother of 3 boys. I know how difficult this business is in terms of the travel and how you're always away. And as you mentioned, you're missing everything. I think balance is really important. I think you're on the road a lot by yourself. It could be a very lonely job sometimes. Being independent, being okay with that, I think is really important. I never realized how independent I was until I actually got into this business and was okay flying by myself and checking into those hotels. And especially now during quarantine, spending, 48 hours straight in a hotel room, it takes that quality. I think versatility, being, really willing to do anything and having the ability to go from sport to sport very flawlessly will allow yourself to have longevity in this business. And I think the other thing is, being a hard worker, thinking outside the box, asking questions, like everyone said, knowing your stuff, because especially as women, we're going to be challenged to another level, especially in a male field. And so I think knowing your stuff is obviously extremely important. And then everyone has touched on it, being a team player and just be a good person. I say to everyone, that is the most important thing. And if people want to work with you, well, you will have a job as long as you want it, because they will go to bat for you over and over again.
It's a really great point. And you see the same people over and over again in this business. You think it's a really big business, sports, but it's actually a very small business. Taylor, I'm sure music the same way. It's a very small business. You see the same people over and over again. Tracy, I'm going to come back to you. We'll go back to the line again, because you guys have both talked about something that I think is comes up often, especially with students and especially with women. And it's that intimidation factor of getting into sports, or that sort of, I call it fraud anxiety. Everyone has it when you're coming out of college. And I'm curious about, A, sort of how did you get past that and realize this was the right career for you? And B, how did you know, we all got into this for the most part because we're fans first. How did you know that you could go from being a fan to then doing it professionally? So let's again go Tracy, Sherry, Taylor, and then Amy.
Yeah, I didn't know. I was a little tomboy growing up. I was obsessed with sports. My parents had no idea. I didn't, have any brothers, and my father wasn't a huge sports fan, but I was 9, 10 years old watching the NBA Inside Stuff. I saw Willow Bay and I said, you know what? I want to do that. And that's when I decided I want to get into the business that long ago. So that's how I transitioned in that sense. I said, I'm going to do whatever I can to talk sports the rest of my life. Now, there was, certainly those bumps in the road. And as you mentioned, that fraud anxiety of how can I do it? And I remember I was at CBS at the time and I was a researcher. And while I wanted to be on the air, the next step is called a broadcast associate. And all the other researchers were interviewing for it. So I was like, okay, I'll interview. And I walked in and my boss at the time said to me, I know you know sports and I know you love sports, but not like the guys do. And I remember being like, wait, did he just say that? By the way, he's not there. I don't even think he works anymore. So no surprise. But I couldn't believe that those words actually came out of his mouth, but it prepared me for the challenges I was going to face as a woman in this environment. And so I think I realized at that point, I always would have to work extra hard. I always make sure, I think it's really, don't draw attention necessarily to myself. Just go about, put your blinders on and really stay focused of what your job and what your responsibility is out there. And that's just to be a reporter, whether you're a male or a female, it doesn't matter. And I've kind of gone throughout my career, heeding those words and really just focusing on myself and my craft.
Well, I just started at CBS Sports in January before everything imploded in March. So I definitely think I have a little fraud anxiety still, that it's something I'm working on, that, it's my first network job. Like, I'm still trying to get my footing. So I hope to, be like Tracy here soon and feel confident and, let that all kind of go to the wayside. But I think it also means you care, that that you need to do the extra research or, do the extra hours of studying, just to make sure you for sure know your stuff. Like Tracy said, you're not the story. What you're saying would be, received the same if it was a dude, a dog, whatever it may be, just making sure that your information is correct. And, being the woman in sports, there's been interviews I've gotten where they wondered if, I was the one who got the interview because we paid someone, or I've had a boss tell me, it's okay to be friends with the players, but you want to make sure people know you got here for no other reason than that, which they would never tell a dude. So it's definitely something you just kind of need to keep in the back of your mind. And I don't say use it as motivation, but it's definitely a little fuel to the fire to know that, like, I can do this job just as well as any of those other dudes.
Yeah, and coming from the music industry background as well, it's definitely a boys' club there too. You have people constantly trying to test you on your knowledge of music and, see like, oh, do you know this band? This band. So, but people will recognize your skill and your quality. And that's what I've learned at the end of the day. If you can do a great job, they'll recognize it. And hopefully with some people, they respect it. And so I just, say, again, be really knowledgeable about your skill, and don't be intimidated by people that try to test you.
Yeah, I think that I found in the beginning, I was always trying to be, I felt like I needed to read, one more article than all the boys, or watch like an extra game, or watch more tape or anything like that. And what I realized through having different women at CBS who I've had as mentors and look up to, Tracy and Suzanne Smith and Emily Deutsch and Leslie Visser, all these great people that we can see who have had these careers at CBS, they kind of made me feel better about it. We know the game. I know how to produce a show the same way any of the boys do. I can write. I have all the skills to do it. So once you kind of let it go that you're trying to be part of that boys club, you just end up, your work speaks for itself and you can be confident in that. And the interesting thing now is seeing some of those people that maybe tested me in the beginning now coming to me for advice or coming to ask me questions, how to do things. And it's kind of a flip, which is neat to see.
Probably a little satisfying too. So let's go back. We'll go Amy, Taylor, Sherry, and Tracy on this one, because, you know, you brought up a great point about, you guys all have, about seeing someone else doing it gives you the confidence to say, I can do that. What we're really talking about is representation. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how you think our sort of industry, or wherever your specific focus is, how do you think the industry is doing in terms of women, in terms of diversity? How do you think sports is doing as a whole on that end? Do we still have Amy with us? There, yeah. Go ahead, Amy.
I think that from the time I started in 2008 at CBS till now, I have seen an exponential growth. I think, you know, I have days in the control room where it's an entirely female control room. That is something I never would have seen 12 years ago. I think especially at CBS, they've always been good about making sure there are opportunities and that the best person is given that opportunity. Our leadership has just, in recent years, has just always used that. If you were the best person, you get the opportunity. So I think that in my personal experience, I've been lucky in that sense. And I do think even traveling and being on the road, you do see a lot more representation over the years increasing, which is what you want to see. You know, change doesn't happen overnight. But I think in my personal experience, I have seen more over the last 12 years.
Yeah. So I think we have a lot more work to do. Yes, there has been change within the industry, both behind the scenes and, you know, with shows like We Need to Talk, which are really inspiring. And it's great to see, you know, Black and brown faces, women on the screen talking to each other, and it's produced by a woman. Like, that's so powerful in this generation. But again, there is still work that needs to be done. But CBS Sports definitely creates an environment where people can talk about, you know, the problems and what needs to be done within the industry. And with the Black Steering Committee, which I'm a part of, they basically help us amplify our voices and to present ourselves and promote people within the company, which is great.
Yeah, I would say I agree there. You know, particularly too, I guess being new to the company, it's been so welcoming just seeing, you know, the way CBS Sports has encouraged diversity. And, you know, I look around and, you know, there's people I can look to and be like, oh, you know, she looks like me. He looks like me. When I was in DC, I was the first Black female to do sports in DC. And I started in 2016, which you would think in DC that would have already been a thing. So it's just a small reminder, but also I think there's a really good sorority, I guess I would call it, of women in sports and then women of color in sports that, you know, definitely been advocating for others. That's really been, I think, a benefit to diversify the industry itself.
I think for me, I came in at an interesting time. I think one of the reasons I actually got my job I started actually, one of the first on-air jobs I got was for MSG Network, and everyone was looking for a female to go alongside with a male counterpart. And so I came in at that time, and my mentor, you know, being Leslie Visser, and people I looked up to, and whether it was Bonnie Bernstein on the air or Michelle Tafoya on the air or Susie Colbert on the air. And now I'm kind of like more on that side and looking at all these young women that are rising up, and it's been incredible. So from my perspective, we've come a long way. And Taylor, I agree completely. We've got a long way still to go. But just to see women in these roles now, and Amy mentioned it, to see a whole production truck or control room of just women is incredible. And I think we're getting there, to see women in the booth now. You know, let's champion that. Let's keep it going. But there's still a lot more work to be done in that area.
I agree. I want to go to some specific questions now. This one's going to be for Tracy and for Amy, because I want to talk about the show We Need to Talk, which was groundbreaking. It matters. It is so important that you are doing this show. And let me start with Amy, then I'll go to Tracy. Amy, what was the original goal of We Need to Talk, and how has it evolved now over the last 6 years?
So when it started, it actually started because we had an opening in our studio schedule coming up in the fall. So in the springtime, and our bosses came to us and said, if you have a show idea, pitch it. So we took a few weeks and we fleshed it out. A few people at CBS Sports, Andrew Finger, Sharon Watson, and I would sit in my cube and just talk about it and started on a napkin. Now, when we bring it up, it's not a novel idea. This is an idea Suzanne Smith and Leslie Visser pitched 20 years ago. It's been pitched a million times, but it was just, the timing was right. Sean McManus and David Burson and Harold Bryant, they all got behind us. They flew in all the women you see on the show to brainstorm it. We had this huge meeting. We got on the air, and from the time it was approved and it was a go in under 60 days, I think, which was just remarkable at that time. And I think the goal at the beginning was just giving us a space, right? A space to have this platform to talk sports. It wasn't anything more than that, but just to talk sports and have interesting, thoughtful conversations. Over the 6 years, I think we've really kind of found our groove. There's been a lot of ups and downs. There were moments we thought we needed to cover everything. Then there were moments where we felt like maybe we don't need to cover everything. And now we've really found our voice and we know how to focus from a producer standpoint, focus on who's on the show and what do they know best and what are they passionate about and what do they want to talk about. And, a lot of times what's happening in the world drives our conversation. And it's an important platform, not only for the women on our network, but for women of other networks. Maggie, you've been a guest on before. We welcome a lot of different people to join us. So it really does just get to provide a platform for everybody to have a voice.
So I remember it clearly when this was being discussed, and Amy mentioned it, where Leslie and Visser and Suzanne Smith had come up with this idea a while ago. And I remember Dave Burson calling me and saying, what do you think? What do you think of a show of all women from different viewpoints? And I'm like, that's incredible. Like, of course, like, how come we didn't do this earlier? And I immediately thought of The View. Like, to me, that was what it was, The View for sports. And then we're like, well, not really The View for, that's too like, fluffy all the time. Like, this is, let's get everyone from different paths, from different lifestyles, who have unique backgrounds, but are all involved in sports in some way. And when you look at the panelists, you have, former Olympic athletes. You have Lisa Leslie and Swin Cash, both basketball players, but then you have Summer Sanders and Dara Torres, who are both swimmers. You have mothers. You have, Katrina Adams, who was president of the USTA, Amy Trask, who was, with the Raiders in the front office. You have so many different, and then you have, reporters and hosts, and you just have so many different backgrounds. And I think the point of the show was really to bring a female voice to sports. Women have just a different perspective on things. And as Amy said, it wasn't about just talking women's sports, because actually we don't often talk only just women's sports. We'll cater it maybe to the WNBA because we have Lisa and Swin that can talk on it. But for the most part, we just talk sports and we give our female perspective. And I think you're seeing, and if you watch this show, you'll see everyone's perspective is different and everyone's background and experience is different. And when you bring that all to one table, you get an unbelievable, dialogue that is just could go in so many directions. And Amy has the responsibility to try and make it into just 1 hour, which is sometimes impossible, but we're also passionate. And I think it just brings all of our viewpoints together in one area, one place, on one topic. And then we move to the next topic. It's fast paced. And we really just unlock, what I love about it is we've become such good friends. It's become a family. We would have never had that opportunity to all get together if it wasn't for this idea. And I think it was groundbreaking. And, you know, I think if you ask everyone, everyone is so honored to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And as I said, it's so important that not only obviously that CBS gave you the opportunity, but what you've done with it, where you've taken it. It's just so important to other women in the industry, quite frankly, and hopefully it's as important to men too. I want to attempt to give some really practical advice to the students who are listening here. So I'm going to start with Sherry, and then I want to go to Amy. So Sherry, in terms of like your reel, and we talked about the fake reels that you put together, Tracy and Sherry, you were talking about that. Talk about I'm not going to say talk about, that's a bad way to start a question. Never start a question that way. Describe what was on your reel, what is on your reel, and give some practical advice to people who want to put one together.
So the reel should be, highlight you, best minute on the top, I believe it was. And it's usually like a couple of stand-ups, as active as could be. I think the fake one was like me sitting in a chair and walking and talking. But as I gained more experience, it's those exciting live shots with people, or being even more demonstrative, like at a playoff game, like this is the tunnel the players are walking down, and then they take the ice this way, or, they take the floor this way to give someone like a behind the scenes look. So as active as you can be. And then a lot of highlights is important in a reel also, and packages, I think, is how I usually order them, but just showing your absolute best stuff. I would say throw everything you like on a reel, like just throw up on your timeline, organize it, and then step away for a bit and then come back, because emotionally tied to your clips makes it hard to kind of clip out the ones that are maybe so. And definitely don't be afraid to ask for advice, because TV is so subjective that, I could ask Tracy, Taylor, and Amy all to watch my reel, and I get 3 very different responses of what they liked. So don't be afraid to get different opinions on what you think you like, or what you don't like, or what someone else could think could be a good addition. The more opinions necessarily won't hurt, but you have to love your reel and think it best represents you. And I guess overall, a lot of personality, because half the time we're, not all saying the exact same things, but we're generally, on the same storyline. So if you can sell you, there's only one of you, so that will help you stand out.
So for Amy, you're getting reels, right? You're watching reels, you're seeing, you're getting pitched. Like, what do you think makes a great reel, or what makes people stand out?
I think what makes people stand out to me in particular is just something a little bit different. I don't necessarily watch reels every day to hire people, but I'll watch, we're looking for someone to fill this role on this show, say. So I want something different than what I have. If we're looking for someone from We Need to Talk, who has maybe a little bit of a different background, as Tracy was saying, that can bring something to the table that's unique. We've added people over the years. We realized that Aditi Kinkambwala, who is on NFL Network and was a writer for a long time at the Wall Street Journal, she brought a different kind of perspective because she was a writer for so long. So that was something that kind of stood out to me, and I noticed that on her tape. So I think showing what makes you uniquely you, and different from everyone, is what will be your sort of X factor to make you stand out from the crowd.
Fantastic advice from both of you. For Taylor, here's a question for you. What are the challenges that you encounter in your job, whether that's daily stuff, whether that's philosophical challenges? What are the challenges that you encounter, and how do you get through them?
Yeah, so one of them actually is more prevalent during this pandemic and staying at home, and that's balancing a work and life balance. I don't know if anyone else on this panel has had trouble with that, especially now. I feel like I'm always working. I'm always on the computer since I'm like here. It's right in front of me. People know I'm home. So they're always asking questions. So that has been really tough to balance. But I always take time to just, step out of the room, step out and of the house really, and just take a walk and, collect my thoughts. And listen to some music that's not work related, because with CBS Sports, a lot of the music can be upbeat pop and, rock. And it's very anthemic, but to just listen to something that's mellow, a singer-songwriter. Right now I'm listening to Alicia Keys, Love Looks Better, stuff like that helps me center myself and have that balance.
I think that's great. And yeah, I think the work-life balance thing, I think everyone probably slowly nodding along with you. Absolutely. Tracy, I want to go to you on this one because this is like the epitome for a lot of people is covering a Super Bowl. I mean, it is everything you would dream of, or tell us, is it everything you would dream of? I mean, what are the challenges there? And, does the excitement, match the moment, or just describe what that's like to know how many eyeballs are on you and to know just how big of a stage it is?
Yeah, I mean, it is the pinnacle. I think it's something, like I said, I grew up wanting to do this, and to have the opportunity to, reach your ultimate goal and do the, biggest game on television is huge. And this will be my fourth Super Bowl. My first Super Bowl, I really just did pre and post game. It was in New Orleans. And the funny story is I went to go put my, get all hooked up, and they said to me, oh, you're not getting on the air unless the lights go out. Well, that Super Bowl, the lights went out. And so I did wind up on the air because I went out there and I found the only piece of information they needed, and they actually put me on the air. So actually just goes to show you to always stay ready. So that was my first Super Bowl. I didn't have time to be nervous. I didn't have time to think about it because I wasn't supposed to be there. So then the second Super Bowl was Peyton Manning's final game. And I remember Andrea Kramer, who I became close with because of We Need to Talk, another mentor who I didn't know before, said to me, you know what, when you walk out there, just take a second and compose yourself and look around and realize where you are and soak that moment up. And Amy is my sideline producer in Super Bowl. So she did the same thing right there with me. And I'm sure she's nodding her head right now. And that was really important for me to do because I could savor that moment. And, then I had Peyton Manning's final interview, and you had to really make sure that I asked the right question at the right time. And yeah, it was nerve wracking. You knew what you had to ask. Is that going to be his final game? How are you going to word it? And then you can go to the Tom Brady Super Bowl and never expecting that Tom's going to want to put off the interview and you're going to be mobbed by people and you're going to be in the center and the whole entire country is going to be watching you go through that. So I think each of my experiences have been really different. I've learned a lot from each one of them. And that's what you get with the Super Bowl. You really never know what to expect. And I think this one is going to be so unique because of the pandemic. We don't know whether there'll be fans there. We don't know how our week is going to be. For all we know, we're going to treat it like another game where we're going to fly in on a Friday and we're going to do the game on a Sunday. Post game might be different. I might not be allowed on a field. So there's a lot of questions going into that one. And I think I'll have another different experience when it comes to the Super Bowl.
That's great. Amy, from your perspective on covering an event that big, what's it like from your vantage point?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first big time, Tracy and I joked on SEC of our Vern moments because we were with Vern Lundquist for a long time and he had called all these amazing moments. And that was kind of my first moment was kick 6 in the Iron Bowl. I don't even know how many years, 8 years ago now, maybe. And they stormed the field and just you take it all in when a big moment like that happens, but then it's also that moment of, wait, I still have a job to do. So thinking through all of that and figuring out okay, how am I going to find the interview? Should Tracy go to midfield? Should I go find the player? We don't have a microphone anymore. Things like that you just kind of have to think on your feet and go as quick as you can. And Andrea had given me the same advice, kind of take it all in, which I didn't do my first, I would say, 5 years at CBS. I was at all these amazing events and would just head to the ground, work as hard as I could, make sure everything was in order, get everything done. And so at Super Bowl, I remember standing there and I think it was Lady Gaga was singing before the game. And Tracy and I kind of grabbed onto each other and went, are you freaking kidding me? We're talking right now. That was our I will never forget that. And then now I always make sure I take that moment. And actually at our last Super Bowl in Atlanta, there was a really cool moment pregame where, because we need to talk, as Tracy said, we have this sorority, which kind of Sherry mentioned, like there's a sorority of We Need to Talk girls who we were all at the Super Bowl, and pregame, it was me, Tracy, Dana Jacobson, Aditi Kinkhabwala, Andrea Kramer were all on the sideline at one time. And somehow on a Super Bowl sideline pregame, traditionally there was hundreds of people, stages, all these things. We ended up in one corner and we have a picture of it. And I have it somewhere around here, but in a frame. But it was just a cool moment to have that memory too, and have that photograph to remember. So I definitely think doing that in the big games, it kind of, you get that moment as a fan. Going back to your previous question, how do you separate being a fan your whole life and then now having to work it? You take those moments to just soak it in, and then you get right back to work, and then you can still enjoy both sides.
Amazing. It's amazing. Before we go to the audience questions, which is going to be happening in just about 2 minutes. So if you guys have gotten your, if you haven't sent your questions in yet, be sure to do that now. Go ahead. I'm going to ask you guys one last one. We can go back through Amy, Taylor, Sherry, Tracy, the most practical piece of advice that you've gotten throughout the years. Like one that really, whether it was like a real nuts and bolts type of thing, not just like work hard and be, that stuff is awesome, but really practical advice. I know this is not an easy question, but Amy, I'm going to start with you. What was practical?
I would have to go to something that Suzanne Smith told me, and and reminds me of a lot. Don't assume everybody knows what you want. So don't be afraid to go into your boss's office and say, I would like to work the Army Navy game, because they're managing a lot of people and they don't know all the time that that's what you want. It doesn't mean you're going to get it, but don't be afraid to ask for what you want and make it known that that's a goal you are working towards.
Yeah, one advice that I recently got from a producer, Gareth Hughes, at CBS Sports, he called me up because we're working on this project, and he was like, if you want something, you have to basically organize all of your thoughts and present it reasonably to your group, but go after it. Even if people say, no, we can't do it that way, we have to do this, keep going after your goal, and obviously taking the right knowledge, taking the right advice if you need to rearrange some things, but go ahead and go after it.
Something that I learned, I guess, early on that, it's a work in progress, but you don't need to necessarily be afraid to make mistakes. We all kind of do. That's why we start usually in smaller markets, but it's definitely a learning process. And that's something I have been working on, that, my first TV job, I thought, by the end of it, I could be a network, sports anchor after 3 years. And I was humbled very quickly by my next job that wasn't network. So it's definitely a work in progress, and you kind of need to learn to forgive yourself sometimes.
Yeah, making mistakes. I definitely know that, Sherry. I got booed off center court at the US Open when I was working for CBS, and for asking the wrong question. That was definitely a big mistake. And I certainly had to pick myself up and keep on moving, which I think is one of those life lessons you learn, right? Make a mistake and keep on moving. I think the other thing would be keep your contacts. I would always tell anyone getting into this business, a young student coming out of school, whatever you can do, keep the contacts you make at school, whether it's alumni or a teacher or someone you worked with, any of your internships, anyone you meet along the way, and don't be afraid to utilize them, because they're going to open doors for you. And I found that, and I don't think I would be at CBS right now if I didn't take those contacts I learned and I met during my first internship. I made a lot of contacts at CBS. I got my first job as a researcher, and then I used those contacts of everyone I worked with as a researcher to get my first job with CBS on the air. It was between myself and someone else, and I truly believe me having those contacts and having spent that 1 year as a researcher there gave me a little bit of the leg up. So make those contacts, utilize them.
That is incredible advice. Perfect, practical. That was awesome. I feel like I was taking notes there. Okay, we have our audience question, our first audience question, and this is Kyra, who's going to ask a question to the panel. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kira. I just graduated from Vanderbilt. Yeah, and so saying Vanderbilt, I'm sure we all heard the news about Sarah Fuller playing last week, and I was really proud and excited about that. But I was also really shocked to see a lot of negative attention. And I know a lot of you talked about like the difficulties being tested in the workplace as a woman in the male-dominated field of sports. But I was wondering if you get that same attention publicly, and if that's ever kind of affected you personally or professionally.
Fantastic question.
I'll start.
Go ahead. Let's go Tracy, Sherry, Taylor, Amy.
I'll just say the one thing I have learned, throughout working in this business is to never Google yourself. Don't look at Twitter. Don't go on your Instagram comments. I mean, part of our job is to be present on social media. It's to build a brand. That's just the way it is these days. But if we start going to look at, those, guys sitting on the couch in their underwear and how, and the responses they're giving to us because they don't like the mole on my face or they didn't like the shirt color I wore. And it's not only men, to be honest. And I think it just brings you down, and you can come off the biggest of highs and have the best game of your life. And if you, open up your phone and start reading things, it just takes away from those moments. And then you can also have a really bad day. And as we all have, and it could make it worse. And you could just be, thinking and sleeping on it for days. And, for me, you got to move on and on to the next one. And that's how it all disappears. So if you open your phone, if you focus on all that negative, those negative comments, it's not gonna get you anywhere. And I've learned to just, block it out and stay focused.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Never type your name in on Twitter or what, just give it some time. The most important thing, to build off of what Tracy said too, is the people who actually know you, know us, those are the ones who are supportive. And, my husband works in the business too, so I'll ask him like, hey, what'd you think? Or, he might give me some feedback, but the people at work who I trust and I care about, those are the opinions I care about, not necessarily the Twitter and Instagram trolls.
Yeah, I'm pretty much more behind the scenes than Tracy and Jerry. But however, I do know that it's really important to have a support group to lean on during those tough times, whether it's your family, your friends, or even a coworker or a mentor, just to ask them questions. But never take too much time to feel bad about something. And like Tracy said, you got to move past it, because the next day it's going to be a different day and you got to be ready.
Yeah, I agree with what Taylor said too. Being behind the scenes, somebody might criticize your show or criticize someone on your show or something you worked on, and that's obviously difficult to swallow. But you have to move on from it, and you have to have a trusted circle, both within your profession, that you can lean on and say, hey, how bad was that really? Learn from it if it was bad, and then move on. And then also have people outside of the business that you can just, whether it's your parents or siblings or other friends you have, to say, I had a bad day at work. Everyone has a bad day at work. Some of our, bad days just happen to be a little more public than others, but you can get through it the same way, they get through a bad day in whatever job they might be in. So.
Great advice on turning off the mentions. Turn off the mentions.
Maggie.
Turn them off. Who's our next question from?
Thank you all for that.
Hi, my name is Ellis, and first off, I'd just like to thank all of you for taking time out of your day to be here. I've looked forward to this panel all day, so I'm so excited. I'm a junior at Syracuse University, and earlier you guys were discussing how sports is kind of like a boys' club, and like how all of you have had your own personal struggles. And I was just wondering, like, how can you make yourself stand out in a male-dominated field? And if you had any advice for students who are aspiring to be in that control room next to them.
Great. Why don't we go Amy, Taylor, Sherry, Tracy. Take it away, Amy.
I don't know if this is a popular opinion or a way to go about it, but I just always thought I belonged. I walked into every room with confidence. I knew I had my job because I worked hard and I had the knowledge to have it and the skills. And I feel like I continue to work hard. And so when I walk into a control room, I don't look at if it's a man or a woman, because that's not how I want people to look at me. So I feel like sometimes when you project that, oh, I want the best director there. I don't care who they are. I want whoever is the best for that position, that, you know, people are accepting of that and see your confidence and know. And so when you're ready for that job and you're put in that position to have the job in the control room that you want, you'll be ready and people will recognize that and respect you, and you'll be able to do great at it because everybody around you will know she's here because she deserves it.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, confidence is definitely key. You know, you have to know that you're going to walk into a room where it's just all men, you know, especially when it comes to sports. That's what the boardrooms kind of look like. Hopefully we can see that change in the future, but don't compare yourself to the other men or women that are working by you. You know, you have to focus on your goal, your track, and to just focus on what you want to see from yourself.
And talking about that confidence, if you go in there knowing your stuff, like I've done the research, I can talk this forward, backwards in my sleep. There should hopefully be no questions for you. I mean, I've been doing this for 7 or 8 years and I still get nervous and wonder, you know, oh man, like, should I be here? You know, I got to do extra work because I'm nervous about the experience. And I think that means you kind of care, but you need to make sure you channel that into, I'm going to work extra hard. So even if I get flustered, I'm going to know what's going on.
Yeah, and Alice, I'm going to agree with Sherry and everyone. You just need to know your stuff. You be confident. Walk in there and say, you know, it doesn't matter where I am or who else is working here. Like, I know that I'm right for this job. I know I can do this just as good as anyone else. I wouldn't draw, you know, I think a big thing for me, I don't draw attention to the fact that I'm a woman in any sense of the word. I think when I'm out there on the air, I make sure in terms of what I wear and how I sound and how I present myself, it's really important to just present myself as a reporter. And I think that's, you know, that's really important to me. Whereas when I'm on We Need to Talk, I could be a girl, you know, I could be passionate about the fact that I'm a woman on that show, but it's very different. So I think just go in there with confidence, know your stuff, and you're going to be great.
Hi, my name is Tyrion Spurs, and I'm a junior at the University of Texas at Austin. And so my question is, because there is a lack of women, especially minority women in the media, what's your advice for career exploration in the industry?
Well, I would say in terms of career exploration, you know, find out from, you know, you're on campus, you know, go to your campus communications center, go to your alumni relations center, reach out to and I talked about connections, and keeping those contacts. And those contacts, I went to the University of Michigan, and I know we have a very, you know, large alumni center right now where you can go and research different jobs and find the alumni that work at those jobs that graduated Michigan and reach out to them. Go to more of these career exploration events. Go reach out to your communications department and say, you know, who else is in this business that graduated from UT Austin, and that's how it all works. It's all by, you know, word of mouth and communications and reaching out and contacts, and those doors will open up. So I would say take advantage of whatever you can on campus right now, because you might not know about it, but there are definitely you know, several different departments that can help you in terms of trying to find a job in this business.
Saying too, if there's anyone you see, like if you're on watching TV, you're just scrolling through Twitter and you do hashtag like sports journalist, don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, I've had a couple jobs where I met like Maria Taylor on the sideline, and literally all I said to her was, oh my gosh, I love you. And like, I look up to you. I did the same thing to Tracy when I joined CBS Sports. There's actually someone else who has a similar name that I got the email wrong, but that's a different story. So don't be afraid to reach out. That, you know, I reached out to Tracy and she gave me great advice for doing NFL. So no matter how big or small, just shoot a tweet, text, Instagram. You'll be surprised who gets back to you.
Yes, and LinkedIn is a great platform to connect with people on. I got my internship at Vice just by reaching out to the VP of music there and saying, hey, you know, I love Vice and what they produce. Do you have an internship available? She said, yeah. And she connected me to someone else. And then I got the internship. And then from that job, I created more connections with other people at publishers and music labels. So definitely you utilize LinkedIn.
And I think definitely being on a big campus like you are and having that kind of access is something that I took advantage of in Miami, which taught me quickly a lot of things I didn't want to do in TV. The first thing I volunteered at was we had a lot of election coverage going on in my first year on campus. We had debates, and I volunteered and quickly learned that wasn't for me, not something I wanted to do. So I think a lot of times when networks come to campus for sports, for different news coverage or whatever it is. I even got an internship at a top 40 radio station, which was great and a lot of fun, but also realized that wasn't what I was going to do. But just who's ever coming to town, they always need bodies. They always need people to work. And even though runner sounds like maybe not the most glamorous of jobs, it gets you in a production truck. It gets you around those people to make those connections, like Tracy was saying. That you never know what door it'll open for a future internship.
Thank you.
Great advice. We have one last question from a student. Go ahead.
Oh, hi, Maggie.
Hi.
I just had a question for you guys. How did you guys know that this is what you guys wanted to do? And was it something that you guys were always passionate about? Or what kind of led you to this, career path that you guys are on? I know that me and many of the other students a part of this are kind of struggling to find our way and to see what we like. And it's so hard, to get into entertainment because a lot of them do require that experience firsthand, but it's so hard to even get the experience because, you don't have it at the background. So what do you guys recommend for students like us to find our passion and to get that experience?
It's such a chicken and the egg thing. You're absolutely right. Let's go back through Amy, Taylor, Sherry, Tracy. Go ahead, Amy.
So I think we touched on this a little bit in the beginning, but I think the most important thing for me to find it was just being open to everything, being open to any experience, being open to any opportunity. I mean, even once I realized that sports was going to be my passion and my career, I ended up being Tracy's sideline producer because her sideline producer got sick and I was on my way. I only did pregame. So I was on my way to the airport and my boss called and said, can you stay in Arkansas for 2 more days? Which, if you know Arkansas, there's nowhere really to go. But I stayed and I was Tracy's sideline producer. And now 10 years later, we've done a few Super Bowls and all these great events. So I think just being, and I had no idea what I was doing, completely no idea. So I think just being open to anything because you never know what opportunity will turn into what is your passion and sort of guide your path. And I think just also knowing that your first job might not be that, right? You might have to have a few jobs and that's okay. It's okay to move positions. I mean, I'm constantly talking with people within CBS who are maybe in one department and want to move. And how do you do that? And how do you help them gain that experience to make that move? So like, take the job, get the experience, and know that there can always be another step along the way.
Yes, and definitely utilize any type of work programs that are a part of your college or school and intern. I cannot tell you how many times I've been an intern. I can't even count, but through those internships, I found out what I didn't want to do, what I didn't like. And that kind of helped me with my journey to take out all the bad stuff and focus on what I wanted to do and talk to different people in the field. Like I said, you can always utilize LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook to talk to someone in the field that you may want to go down to see if that's possibly the path that you want to take.
In trying different jobs, you might find a skill set that might help you down the line. I mean, working in news to start off, I realized that there's a newsy side to sports, but there's also like a sports side to news. So the different jobs that you may find can either help you kind of narrow down what you like, what you don't like, but also can kind of make you a more versatile candidate, which could help you also in the long run.
For me, you asked, when I knew, I had mentioned I knew when I was in elementary school. So this is what I wanted to do. Didn't know that I would actually get there. So I took a real roundabout route and did do several different jobs. And, I went to the University of Michigan, and right out of school, I interned at HBO Sports. And then I was a researcher at CBS, and I was like, oh, maybe I want to be behind the scenes. And, if I did, at least I had some experience there. Although that it just kept driving me. I still wanted to try to get in front of the camera. And then actually I left, being a researcher after I told you the story about not getting that next job at CBS. And I was an agent for a year, and my job was to put tapes together and see what news directors wanted, and what my tape should look like, and what my cover letters should look like. And so I learned so much from that job. And then I realized I still wanted to be on the air. I was getting everyone else jobs. And when was I going to get on the air? So then I took a job. Actually, I wrote a great cover letter to Bob Wolf, the legendary Bob Wolf at News 12 Long Island, and he hired me to be his producer. So then I was a sports producer for a local sportscast for a year. And that's where I made my fake tape. I would go out with a reporter and put it together. I still wanted to try to be in front of the camera. And then that led me to my first job. So I agree also with Sherry, where you learn so much along the way. And because of all the production background I had and the writing experience of doing all, I feel like it's really helped me in front of the camera. And certainly being an agent helped me make my tape. So you learn stuff along the way until you finally realize exactly what it is that you want to do.
Those have been such fantastic questions. I mean, not that I'm surprised, but they were really amazing, spot on, and fantastic answers as well. We've got time for one more. And so this one will be from me, but this could be career, this could be life. You guys can take this in any direction you want, but considering we're talking to students, and I know, college can be amazing, fun, but when you're thinking about your career, it can also be stressful and all of that. If you could go back and talk to your college self and give yourself one piece of advice, and putting yourself in the students who are listening, putting yourself in their shoes now, what would you tell your college self, considering all that now you've been through? We go Tracy, Sherry, Taylor, Amy.
Yeah, I think I would tell my college self it's not going to be easy. You're going to have a lot of bumps in the road. It's going to be a long journey to get to where you want to go. There's going to be highs, there's going to be lows. You're going to have to juggle a family at the same time. And, as we talked about, you're going to miss a lot of opportunities. You're going to be lonely at times. You're going to, want to cry sometimes, and you're going to want to shout on top of a mountain, oh my God, I did it. And I think there's just going to be it's a roller coaster. It's a long road, but I encourage anyone who has that dream or a dream to do something to just go after it, because you'll feel so good once you do.
I would say I'm not a very patient person. I still am not. It's something I work on every day. But I would definitely tell myself to be patient, that, like I said before, I thought I could make it network 2 jobs ago. That would have been very bad. So just knowing that, like Tracy said, it's a roller coaster. It's a process. It's a marathon. Just, paying your dues. It's going to be worth it. I hope in the end. I mean, Tracy mentioned it. I mean, that's where I want to be, and I see myself hopefully in the future. So you just got to kind of stay the path.
Yeah. And getting into a career in music, I have had so many people tell me, music, there's no money in music. Why are you even pursuing this career? So I would definitely say, don't listen to the naysayers. Don't let it affect you. And like I said earlier in a question, have that support group to lean on when the times get tough.
I think I would say that there's going to be a lot of sacrifices, as Tracy mentioned, but it's going to be okay. I think that's a thing I now say a lot. It's going to be okay no matter what you're dealing with. You're going to figure out a way, and also hang on to these people that are around you now, because you're going to need them whether for a lot of different things. So the same people who were by me all those years ago, my family, my friends, still, if you talk to them now, you would think my parents would probably describe me that I was like Oprah, and so would my friends from college. So they were the same people cheering me on then that were cheering me on now. So I think it's important to, even though you can get lost in the shuffle, you have your grinding, as Tracy said, you're trying to like navigate this world, the ups and downs. So like keep your people close because they're going to be super important along the path.
Amazing. Amy, Tracy, Taylor, Sherry, you guys were phenomenal. This was so enlightening and just really great. It was practical. It was real advice. I think everyone really learned a lot, and I learned a lot. So thank you.